Did you know that your blood makes up about 8% of your overall body weight? Yeah, neither did I. It's okay. I didn't know that either. Welcome, by the way, to One Nothing Podcast. I read this thing recently that you have to grab a person's attention in the first 5 seconds or they lose interest and just scroll past. So we'll see if that worked when I check out the stats for the download for this episode next week. So if you're still here, what a week it has been, you guys. Oh my gosh. I've been working nonstop. It feels like, in reality, I've been working nonstop. I had to find time to do like the 4 hours worth of research for this episode, and then working 2 jobs, and I'm working a bunch of hours between the 2 jobs. And then, of course, I also have the Virginia City Chronicles episode 1 coming out with the Paranormal Project, which is coming later today, the live. So stay tuned to our Instagram for the link to the live because you're not going to want to miss it. It is spooky as hell. But it's just been a lot going on, and I'm really thankful for it because you guys have been great. This community has been so welcoming and supportive, and I'm just very thankful to have you guys, sharing your lives with me and these fellow podcasts that kind of show support to me, and I like to show support back. I'm just really grateful. And life is really tough for me right now, kind of like living alone in Southwest Florida as a not super high income person is a struggle. So it's nice. And I just recently moved here a few years ago, I guess, if that's recent. So I don't have a huge social circle yet because it's weird. It's like hard to make friends when you're an adult. I'm not in any clubs or anything. I just work and I work from home. And then I DoorDash, and then I don't really have much of a social life because I just work a lot. So it's hard for me. But you guys make it fun, you make it worthwhile. I really see this podcast going somewhere, and I really hope it does. And you guys are helping me to kind of like envision that. So I really, really appreciate it. I really wish people would start listening to like our recent episodes because I do feel like every episode gets better. It's like a fine wine, you know? I feel like where we are now is so much better than where we are on episode 1. Episode 1 is honestly, it's a little embarrassing. I'm not going to lie. I didn't really know what I was doing, but it's okay. That's how it starts. The point is everybody keeps listening to episode 1 and they don't like it. And then they don't listen to anything else, but we're funny. So just download the more recent episodes and listen to some of the funny stuff and some of the better cases not better cases, they're all good, but like the more detailed, there wasn't a whole lot of detail on Barbara. I do a lot more detail now. So just listen to the new stuff. I mean, if you're listening to this, you're already doing that. But I have my Canada Dry over here representing me, have to have my little bit of Canada somewhere. For those who aren't on Instagram, I recently just posted that we have opened up our listenership to a total of 6 countries now. So Canada, the UK, and Australia are on the map, joining Bangladesh, and then Mexico, and of course the United States. So I'm so excited that there's listeners all over the world. My heart, for some reason, is in Australia. I am obsessed with Australia. I don't know why. I've never been there. I don't know that. And Botswana, Africa, I just feel like I was lived there in a previous life or something, maybe. I don't know. But I'm so excited that we have listeners. And the day we get a listener in Africa, let me tell you, the heavens of podcasts are going to open up and swallow me whole. Anyway, let's get back into the thing. So, we released the last episode of the Paranormal Project's first mini series, which was Top Terror Tuesdays. That was awesome. Mysteries of the Uinta Basin. I learned so much. The whole series was basically about skinwalkers and UFOs, and my section was about a man named John Edmonds who had a wife named Joyce Edmonds, and they were both very prestigious professionals who moved onto a ranch to start an animal rescue, and they had all of these extraterrestrial experiences and lots of evidence behind it, and it was one heck of a talk. So go check that out if you haven't already. It is on Courtney's podcast, on Han's podcast. It's also on Farrah's podcast at the Conversation Cabin. I think it's on Vicky's at Miss Spooky Obsessed, and it's going to be on mine eventually. But listen, I'm broke and I only have enough money to pay for this to support 3 hours of content a month. So that's why we don't upload more often, because our episodes are long, because it takes me a lot of time to do a lot of research to put into these episodes. So go listen to it over there, and maybe eventually, if it's requested enough, I'll put it on ours. But for the time being, I don't have that much upload time to host that, and they're like 2 hours every time we do an episode. So that would encompass the majority of my monthly allowance, and I wouldn't get to do my bi-weekly episodes, which I thoroughly enjoy doing with you guys because I like to learn a lot about these victims. It makes me feel like I get to know them almost in a way. You know, I don't know. It just makes me feel some kind of a weird link to them that I can't really explain. And I like recall everything about them. Like I can tell you at length anything about any one of our victims just sitting down. Like I do it to my mom. She gets annoyed all the time. She's like, "We shut the fuck up about these victims." And I'm like, "No, let me tell you about this woman, Catherine Genovese, who was murdered, in Queens, New York, in front of all of her neighbors that listened as they were sleeping. Stuff like that. I could tell you about all of our victims. And I love that I learned so much about them and they stay with me as I do, as like a respectful thing. Sidebar, when I walked into my house a little bit ago, a spider scurried across the floor in the room that I'm recording this in. So if any point, because I don't edit these, we record it and we go. And they're like an hour and some, and like I'm not re-recording. So if something should happen where that thing scurries its way over to me, hope I'm not speaking that. Let me knock on wood real quick. Please don't bark, dogs. My dogs will bark if they heard a knock. Anyway, if he scurries over here and I flip out, just hold on and I'll regain control of the situation and come back to you. But in the meantime, we're going to move on. As you probably noticed by now, we don't have Rachel. That's okay. I like having you all to myself sometimes. And she's got a crazy couple weeks herself. She picked up a bunch of shifts at her new job. So she's working these like 12-hour shifts. So she needs her sleep. The girl can like barely even eat right now between her shifts. So she needs to rest. But that's okay because this episode is a really tough one. So maybe it's more appropriate that we don't have her just because she's super funny and she helps bring that like fresh sense of comedy. But this one maybe doesn't need comedy. It's just really dark. So we're just going to stick with it being dark and let it be what it is. And if that's not your jam, I totally don't blame you if you don't want to listen to this, but it's pretty gnarly. So she's fine too. Like we're all hustling to make something here. And if you live down here in Southwest Florida, you'll understand everything that I'm talking about. There is just zero affordability if you don't make six figures, but we do what we have to do to get it done. Oh, we're also looking to potentially move in together because that would save us both money on rent and allow us to save to be able to maybe purchase or live out our dreams and stuff like that. So if that happens, then you can count on her being in our podcasts like every podcast because we'll be living together. So she won't have a reason not to be here. So, but in the time between that, she'll come between like every now and then for the majority of them. She's just going to have to miss some of them, and that's okay. Well, I warned you already about our episode, but before we get really dark and sad and gloomy, I want to talk about our socials a little bit. So I'm just going to, I usually prepare like a list, but I'm just going to open up Instagram on the willy-nilly right now. And we're just going to scroll through and see who stands out. Because we have a lot of new followers and a lot of really cool podcasts I want to shout out. So I'm going to go down the list real quick. Oh, if you're not following us on Instagram, you're behind the times because we post some really good stuff. So go over there. It's One Nothing Podcast with the @ sign in front. And then we have a TikTok as well. Nothing Podcast, same thing, One Nothing. I have hiccups something fierce now. Sorry, that Canada Dry is getting to me. But go follow us and we post a lot of cool stuff on there. So let's shout out some of the more common people. Oh, first off, Plus Ultra Forever. They've been showing us a lot of love and liking a lot of our stuff lately. So thank you. Underscore down the period rabbit hole underscore. They've been amazing. We messaged back and forth. They just listened to episode 5 and had thoughts about what had happened to Jerry, the case where the woman was lost off the Appalachian Trail and passed away, unfortunately, 4 weeks later. That we just did that one. If you didn't hear that, obviously go listen to that because it was a doozy. Some of our newer followers, we have HRIDOY Hashan. I don't want to spell that wrong. 90. We have Find Barb Cotton, which I looked through that. And that definitely is a page about a missing person. So please go check out Find Barb Cotton. It's BARBCOTTON. Find Barb Cotton, no spaces or anything. Go review her page. This woman's been missing for like 40 years. So just go check it out. Who else do we have on here? Christy70 hit up a bunch of our posts and liked them, so thank you. We have We Like Sports ZPC recently followed us. Elite Shorts Creators recently followed us. Online Promotion. Thanks for the follow, but it's promotion. Just a helpful hint for you. If you're going to scam people, do it right, you know. Jay Johnson 218269 started following us recently. Thank you. Hans shared our stuff on their story. Miss Spooky Obsessed shared our stuff on their story. Both of their podcasts are amazing. Go check them out. They are like, if you're into creepy, they're top one. Go check them out. They're on Instagram, and you can find links on their Instagram to where to listen to their podcasts. And then recently followed Carlo Alani 3, The Universe Unhinged. Thank you for following us, everybody who's been recently hitting us up. BDBO, as always, they're always showing us love and commenting on our stuff. They have a hilarious new series called Shroom Talks, which is exactly what it sounds like. And it follows up their Drunk Talks, which is also exactly what it sounds like. So it's funny. If you like that, go check it out. They're hilarious. BDBO Podcast. Bring the Boots Out is the full length name. Yeah, there's so many of you guys that really give us love on Instagram, and I really love it. TikTok's not as strong. We don't have as much engagement on there, but we do post the videos, mostly the same stuff we post on Instagram, but maybe now and again I'll post something on there that's unique. You never know. All right. Lastly, last week's question of the week, which was, what is your lifetime's most ambitious goal, and have you achieved it, or will you achieve it? So we had some answers to that. We had where _ the weird ones are, which they've also been awesome to us lately, so shout them out as well. I've wanted to be a published writer since I was a kid, currently working on it to make that happen. So it's a great aspiration. Liam reached out and said to get out more and to try to give up smoking and to speak more to the public, since social anxiety is a horrible thing. Liam, I get it. You hear, I can't talk for crap. I get it. Rick _ Fresh said to go back and finish my degree and become a teacher. Those are just really good. Awesome aspirations, guys. Those are really cool. I hope you guys achieve those. I bet you will, because all of you guys rock. So yeah, I'm out of happy content to share before we go into this. So everybody get your snacks. Get your drinks, such as my Canada Dry. Get your vapes, get your whatever you want, your beer. I sure as hell need it, because this one is rough. This one stuck with me, and I've thought about it a lot since I started researching this, and some of the audio that I've witnessed is pretty horrible. So let's get into the trigger warnings first and always. The content discussed within this episode is frankly horrifying and very triggering, and we will go into depth into child abuse, neglect, and child death, among those related topics. So if you are underage or otherwise sensitive to those topics, please go find another episode, maybe another podcast, depending on how bad you're triggered, because you know what we do here. But just putting that out there, it's bad. I'm going to be playing some 911 audio as well throughout. I have a few minutes of the actual 911 call, and then I have a few minutes of the investigative audio that happened when officials were on scene, medical officials originally. So it is extremely difficult to hear. Listener discretion is advised. Don't make me say my bit about the kiddos and the tablets either. Y'all know how I feel. Just be smart about this. Without further ado, let's climb back into the 1-0 time machine and travel just a few years to January 4th, 2014. I don't like the bump in my house that doesn't have an egg. I'm going to assume it's a cat. It's my cat. All right, January 4th, 2014. This typical day, a gorgeous blonde-haired little boy is brought into the world by two adoring parents in the Birmingham Children's Hospital in West Midlands, England. Yes, you're right. We traveled across the pond for this one. We're in the UK. So our new UK listeners, settle in. Like any new parents to a bundle of joy, they're ecstatic and eager to bring their new baby home. And they pick the perfect name for him, Arthur. His parents, Thomas Hughes, and his father, Thomas Hughes, and his mother, Olivia Labinjo Halcrow, weren't the perfect couple by any means, but with a new addition to the family came hope for some change and maybe some more positive influence throughout the relationship. Sadly, that change did not come, and Thomas and Olivia decided just shy of Arthur's second birthday that they simply could not resolve their differences, and the couple split up, and that left Arthur primarily in the care of his mother, Olivia. It didn't take long for Olivia, being a single mother, to find her way into another relationship, this time with a man named Gary Cunningham, which was okay for the first little while, as most relationships are when you're in that hiccups again. When you're in that stage of getting to know one another, everything's all fine. But sadly, not all men are decent, nor all women. And after time, Olivia realized she had mistakenly fallen for a man with abusive tendencies. So after what seemed to be a relatively long and tumultuous relationship of at least maybe a couple years of domestic violence and physical abuse, Olivia snapped, and despite the fact that the decision put poor 5-year-old by then Arthur completely at risk, she stabs Gary and she kills him in February of 2019 as apparent self-defense from domestic violence. Olivia is subsequently arrested, of course, for the murder of her partner, and Arthur is whisked away to his father, Thomas, and he was living at the time in an annex, which I looked up because I am from Canada, I live in the US, I don't know what an annex is, but it's like a small attached living space that's kind of attached to a larger living home. So like think in the United States like a mother-in-law suite, when you have like a house and then like a little attached area, it's kind of like that. But it was behind his paternal grandparents' home, or paternal parents, so Arthur's grandparents. Thomas doesn't know what to do. Like, he has some knowledge of how to be a parent, obviously, but he really hasn't had to be a single father before. So he just starts doing what makes sense. And so he enrolls Arthur in a primary school, which people in America is like elementary school. Usually kids start going there around like 4 or 5. So like, cool, that's figured out. He's got an education started, he's going to school. And the school staff is like, he's really nervous at first, but through time, he eventually kind of warms up. He starts coming around and he becomes quirky and a little, happy, well-rounded, normal child traits. So like a few months pass, Thomas is doing all right, being a single dad, doing the thing, but he's got needs. And the needs that I'm talking about. He needs a lady, he's tired of being a single dad. He's like, I need some poon. So what does every lonely, horny, middle-aged guy with not much going for him in the looks thing, the looks category, what do? You go online and you get on the dating apps. So he gets himself an account with Plenty of Fish, which is like the scum of the dating app world, in my opinion. I had a Plenty of Fish account once. Sadly, it was not pretty. There's not much quality on Plenty of Fish, like at all. And we all know, like, Tinder's the booty call site. Plenty of Fish is just like where the crazy people who have exhausted all their other options go. So like if you have a POF and it's not working for you, that's why. Delete it and go find like Bumble or something. Anyway, so he gets on there. He makes himself a profile. He puts himself out there. He has a few matches, obviously, But in August of 2019, he lands on the profile of this girl named Emma Tustin. And he's like, he sees her. She's like, oh, wow. Oh my God. And he likes what he sees. He's like, yeah, that's the one. That's that piece of absolute trash that I want to be involved in. So yeah, go get her, Tiger, Foreshadowing a little, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, Emma and Thomas match. They meet up. And before long, they're dating. They're doing as couples do. And Emma has 2 kids of her own. She's a son and a daughter, both young. Thomas, like any shitty parent, introduces Emma to Arthur, like, pretty much immediately. He's like, yo, this is my son that I just got because my fucking baby mom killed her dude and it was traumatizing and he got sent to me. But yeah, here's my kid. Like, that's not what you do. But Thomas is like, oh, they were friends straight away, though. Like, they were good friends, my son and this girl. Okay, but like, I don't know. Maybe it's just, I don't have kids, so like, correct me if I'm wrong, I guess. Then, run to the DMs. But like, you don't just go out and introduce your kid to the new partner. Like, that's bad, right? To come in and out of their life like that when they've just experienced trauma like that. Like, no, you like wait until they're a long-term thing and then you introduce them. In my opinion, if I had a kid, that's what the fuck I would do. Anyway, a couple weeks later, school's back in session. from summer. Arthur goes back. He had like a cool summer. He's like, okay, I got to got to know my dad. I got to like my grandparents and cool, it's kind of cool. So he's having an all right time. And the teacher's like having him as a student. They don't have any problems. Everything's fine. But then a couple weeks after school goes back in session, Emma and Thomas start dating or whatever. And Arthur's uncle noticed like a visit. Or no, I'm so sorry. A couple weeks after Emma and Thomas get together, Arthur's uncle notices during a visit that he's like being stricter towards Arthur and becoming more and more afraid of getting in trouble. Like nothing too weird, so he doesn't really think anything of it. But then like a little while later, November of 2019, Arthur's teacher organizes this like big meeting between Thomas's mom, so Arthur's grandma, and then Arthur. And she wants to discuss this big list of concerns that she has about Arthur's behavior. She's like, look, he's been in my class the past few weeks. He has this disturbing obsession with guns and death and what's happening in the news. And like he began fixating even more unsettlingly on this fear of being taken away from Thomas or even killed by him. So like, I'm sorry. So someone was expressing, this child was saying he's afraid his dad is going to kill him. That didn't raise any alarms. Yeah. Well, it did, obviously. So it prompted significant concerns because the teachers are like, what the fuck? But school officials are like, well, just, we'll talk to everybody and see or whatever what's going on. Like, it doesn't have to be a big thing. So, okay, fine. So Thomas is like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take him to this doctor and I'm going to get his mental health checked out. And they're like, okay, at least you're doing something about this, So in March of 2020, he takes Arthur to Dr. Carrie Forsyth Benson, who's obviously a doctor at the Children and Adolescent Mental Health Services building or something, services. She does a thorough evaluation of him, and despite his repeated concerns that his dad wouldn't return to pick him up, he was deemed of sound mental health, and that was that. Aside from him being like, oh, that's weird, he's so afraid of his dad leaving him, but like, he's fine otherwise. Just like a weird professional opinion to have about a child that didn't raise concerns, but okay. I'm not a professional health, person. So March 2020 was also a very relevant time for pretty much the entire globe and like most certainly for England. But anyone know what happened then in March of 2020? You want to think back? That's right. COVID happened. And with it, the lockdown of the entire educational system and also the inability to really maintain a relationship if you didn't live together. And I'm speaking from experience because I tried to have a relationship over COVID. That shit was miserable. But anyway. The next big step in Thomas and Emma's relationship is like, well, we can't really see each other much in this era where we have to be quarantined, can't really travel much and see each other. So they decide, let's move in together. But Emma already has a house with her 2 kids, and like he just lives in that little like kind of house connected to his parents. So like it only makes sense that he would move in with her. So they do, and Arthur changes schools and they go move into Emma Tustin's home, and she lives in this place called Solihull. Some city in England that I can't pronounce. And Thomas's mother objects. That she's like, why don't you just stay with me through the pandemic, at least stay in the house where I can watch. He's like, no, I'm going to live with her. And I really wish he had stayed because I wholeheartedly think this decision sealed the deal, but we'll talk about that later. So just 1 month after he moves in with Emma and her children, Thomas gets into a disagreement with her and he leaves. He takes Arthur and he's like, I'm leaving. And he goes to his mom's, which Arthur's grandma. And they arrive and it's clear Thomas is like frustrated about whatever their argument was about, which I couldn't find what their argument was about. And, his mom is still doting on Arthur, though, his grandma. So she comes across this horrifying discovery of several large bruises on his back. And she's like, what the hell? Like, what happened? So she's questioning Arthur. He reveals he got the bruises when he was pinned against the wall and was called a horrible, ugly brat. So who could do and say such things towards a 6-year-old child, you might ask? Emma Tustin could. So rightfully outraged at these allegations that Emma pinned him against the wall and called him a horrible, ugly brat, Thomas's mom, who is really honestly one of the few heroes in this story, she snaps some photos. She's like taking some pics of his bruises. She's like, I'm getting some evidence. So Thomas gets ready to leave and he's like, I'm going to go back home. I'm going to go leave. And she's like, please leave Arthur here. She's like begging him, like, just leave him here. And he's like, Mom, you're being crazy. And he gets Arthur and he leaves and they go back to hell. I mean, Emma Tustin's house. His mom does not take this as an answer, though, and she calls social services and she reports Emma Tustin. Good fucking job, Grandma. Her name is Joanne, by the way, which is my mom's name. So good fucking job, Joanne. So the next day, April 17th of 2020, boom, social services is at Emma's door, and Jane Kavanaugh from the Solihull Council is interviewing the family in like the living room. And she asks Emma about the bruises on Arthur's back, and she's like, oh, well, that's because Arthur and my son were playing with boxing gloves, and that's how he got the bruise. They were like play fighting. Likely story. So the social worker does look at the bruise, and by then it's like a little bit faint. She said it was one faint bruise, but who knows? Because it sure seemed like more the day before when Joanne was taking photos of it and being like, WTF. But anyway, so then Jane is like, okay, like she gets the two kids, the sons, Arthur, and then whatever her son's name was, which I couldn't find. Not that it doesn't matter. He's not involved, so I don't really want to involve another innocent child that had nothing to do with this. But Jane is like, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, with the floor being 0 and the ceiling being 10, how happy and safe do you feel? And both the boys jumped and giggled and pointed at the ceiling for a 10. And the caseworker concludes Arthur is in a very happy and safe home, and there are no safeguarding issues in the home whatsoever. She does recommend to Thomas, though. She's like, hey, you should get him into an early help program and like help him come to terms with his trauma that he suffered as a young child, losing his mother in the fashion that he did. Thomas declines the offer. He's like, nah, I got it. I don't need professional help. It's fine. Fucking douchebag. Anyways, sorry. Trigger warning language. The next day, again, April 18th, Arthur's uncle, which is, again, one of the only other heroes in the story, calls the West Midlands police because obviously Children's Services wasn't going to do anything about the bruises, and he, had photos of them. So he sends photo of the bruises to an officer, and he doesn't even receive a reply. You might wonder why. That's because the cops took one look into the case. They saw Child Protective Services was involved, so they closed the log. They're like, oh, we don't need to act like someone's involved. It is literally poor Arthur against the world at this point. Like, everyone's just brushing off everything. A couple days later, on April 20th, Arthur's grandma, Joanne, yet again gets involved, and she tells the school about social services involvement. She's like, yo, I just want to let you know social services is involved. They just did an interview. So Michelle Hull, which it was a person who worked at the school, she contacted social services to see what was going on. She's like, I want to know the deets. She calls them up, and they're like, they don't have any concerns. Everything's fine. We went out to the home. They're in a very loving home. So that was that. So in May of 2020, Arthur's mistreatment in the home begins to escalate, and he is isolated for long periods of time. He's frequently made to stand in this hallway, kind of like away from everything, for prolonged periods of time. And then Emma and Thomas begin depriving him of food and water. And these are punishments for Arthur's supposed misbehavior. And Emma texts Thomas throughout the day routinely to report these so-called misbehavings, and the two talk about how to deal with him. They're like, oh, this child's so terrible. What are we going to do with him? Like, this 6-year-old boy who lost his mother. Well, she's in jail, but might as well, lost all the same. So Emma and Thomas constantly call Arthur horrible names to his face. They call him things like devil child, Hitler, weasel, Satan. And they call him a variety of swear words, probably fucker, stuff like that. Thomas frequently threatens violence against Arthur, and he regularly receives audio clips of Arthur crying via text from Emma. One particular argument between Thomas and Emma ends in Emma telling Thomas, I want you, I just don't want him, in reference to Arthur. Yeah, his son. Yeah. You would think any dad who received that text would have been like, okay, let me delete your contact real quick and dip. No. No pussy is that good. I'm just going to say it. It's seriously, in what world? Like, I get you just got your kid, but he's your child. And you let this bitch you've known for a few months tell you that she doesn't want him. That should have been the end of it. He should have walked away right then. But he doesn't. And then they continued the abuse. They escalated even more by forcing him to move out of the bedroom that he shared with Emma's son and daughter, where he had a bed, and they start making him sleep on the floor of the living room with this pathetic little duvet, little blanket. And even when Emma's kids were staying elsewhere for the night and their beds were open and available, she still made him sleep on the cold, hard floor of the living room. So towards the end of the month, Emma's stepfather, John Dutton, he also figures out he's not being treated right. And he makes an anonymous complaint to social services saying that he felt Arthur's life was in grave danger. Again, another one of our story's heroes. There's few of them, but they exist. This goes unheeded, and Emma continues her wrath on this poor 6-year-old child. I hate this piece of shit woman. I don't even want to call her a woman. She's just disgusting. I don't even care if this podcast gets banned, honestly. Just learning about this vile woman. And when I play the recording, we'll get there. But, she disgusts me. Piece of shit. So June 8th, 2020, Dickens Heath Community Primary School reopens following the months-long shutdown from the COVID pandemic. Someone is not in attendance, though. Arthur Labinjo Hughes is not on the attendance sheet. So the school calls Thomas, and he's giving these variety of reasons on why he's not in school. He's he's not eating and he's losing weight, and if he goes to school, he might faint, so he just can't go. And then apparently, and I say apparently because I couldn't really find anything solid to verify this, but I did see in a couple places that social services signs off on his absences and is yeah, that's a legitimate reason for your kid to not be in school. That's fine. No school for you. So plot twist, Arthur never makes it back to school. So Emma and Thomas, however, invest in some security cameras that they put throughout their home with no purpose in mind apart from just tracking Arthur's every move and making sure that they can monitor every single thing he does. So the cameras are a blessing in one aspect because everything that happened within the home after that moment that they were installed was caught on CCTV and became available as evidence when officials needed it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. June 12th, 13th, and 14th, those 3 days, Arthur is captured on the family's security footage standing in the hallway where he was forced to remain for the majority of those 3 days. And when I say majority, I meant out of the 72 hours that encompassed those 3 days, he spent 35 of those hours standing in the hallway. At one point, he tries to enter the living room, and Emma Tustin slaps him in the face. There's a terribly haunting audio of Arthur crying that nobody loves him and pleading for his grandma and pleading for his uncle. And Emma records it and sends it to Thomas. And I was going to play it for this episode because I listened to it, but I honestly, for one, I can't bring myself to listen to it again. And for two, it's something that, like I said, it sticks with you and you can't get it out of your head. I don't really want to inflict that on you guys. So if you want to go hear it, you can absolutely go Google it. Arthur Labinjo Hughes, Labinjo space or hyphen Hughes. And he cries that nobody loves him and he pleads for his grandma and it's heart-wrenching. And I don't want to listen to it again. So it fills me with anguish that this poor child at 6 years old, he thought nobody loved him. So go listen to it if you have the heart. I don't have the heart to listen to it again. I wish I hadn't heard it the first time, but it was kind of necessary evil for this episode. Don't recommend you do it, though, if you are traumatized easily or have any kind of mental health issue, because it's bad. It hurts. It sucks. But throughout June, CCTV footage shows that the family is enjoying all these nice meals and leisure activities, all the while Arthur stands in the hallway unable to participate whatsoever. June 15th rolls around. We keep skipping days. This is how long. I mean, we've already gone a couple months of this abuse and neglect. But June 15th rolls around and Emma Tustin, dirtbag of the century, she decides she needs a new updo. So she's going to go to the hair salon. But she can't leave Arthur home alone because that would make her an irresponsible parent. Sorry, I need my drink to keep it going because it's really tough. But she takes Arthur with him because she doesn't want to leave him home alone. And she makes him stand facing the wall in an obscure corner by the door of the salon. And she shouts at him frequently and swears at him throughout the entire 6 hours they're there. But he stands there in the corner. The hairdresser, Catherine Milhench, watches this happen, but does not intervene. Hairdresser, you're a piece of shit too, just so we're clear. She later told police that he was skeletal in appearance and said that his legs were shaking like he couldn't hold himself up. Yeah, Catherine, that's because he couldn't. Where the fuck were you when this was happening? Why did you do absolutely nothing? I just want to talk. So Arthur ends up collapsing where he was standing there by the door, and Thomas arrives and they go to leave. Nobody helps him though. He just lays there, and then when they're finally ready to leave, they pluck him up and go home. And then once they're home, Thomas belted Arthur in the leg several times and tells Emma in a text to just end him. Yep. about his 6-year-old fucking child. June 16th, the next day, the footage obtained from the families, if you can call them that, I'm using that term very loosely, their security footage shows a very frail and weak Arthur struggling to carry his little blanket out of the room. The poor kid looks visibly weary and like he could just crumble to pieces at any moment. And I watched it, and it's brutal, and he definitely is struggling to move around. But despite his weak state, Thomas and Emma throw him back into the car and go to the hairdresser's house again, and the couple each take shot after shot, screaming and cursing at Arthur, who again was instructed to stand away from them and not move or speak, to the point where the hairdresser said it looked like a game of tennis the way they were going back and forth taking verbal shots at Arthur. The hairdresser's partner, Tobias, which is the tiniest of heroes here, but one of the good people, I guess, he sneaks this kid a glass of water while nobody's watching, and he's like, oh my God, this kid is a walking skeleton. And he later describes him to police as gaunt, malnourished, and a poor little kid who was broken. Thomas, Emma, and Arthur head home. I'm just so mad that all these people witnessed this and they're not doing anything about it. So they're back at the house, and Thomas leaves for, I think, work. I don't know. He left the house for some reason, but it's like 2:00, and Emma goes upstairs in her home to put on some makeup and try to make her ugly ass look better, because we all know she does not have a single thing going for her otherwise. She encounters Arthur and decides to try to overdose him on salt. She denies doing this, but the police and the court prosecutors, they have pretty good evidence for this being exactly what happened. And she even sent a photo of Arthur crying in the hallway to Thomas, like probably crying from being force-fed straight up salt. Can you imagine how terrible that would be? I can't handle a teaspoon of salt. Imagine someone dumping that down your, like, oh, I can't. Not even half an hour after this, at 2:29, Emma again goes out of her way to go into the hallway where Arthur's always forced to stand for the majority of his days, and she violently shakes him and hits his head against some hard surface of some kind. I'm personally guessing the wall, but who knows? She repeats this several times. The entire attack lasts about a minute. That's awful. Like, do you realize how long a minute is? And like we do, but to experience something like a brutal attack, like you're 6 years old, your bones are mush. A minute feels like an eternity when it's something painful. Like a minute feels like eternity when I'm waiting for a Hot Pocket in the microwave. You know, it's just, I don't understand her motivation to get up and go find him with the intent to shake the fuck out of him. Like, such a piece of shit. Why? Just sit down with your fucking show. Like, not that he should be standing in a hallway, but my point is she got up out of her chair to go inflict that assault on that child. So Arthur is obviously not okay from that, and he just slumps down there, not really moving. Emma takes her time. She calls Thomas, and she's like, oh my God, what should I do? And then she calls 999, which is the UK version of 911, so it's emergency services. And she tells them that he fell and banged his head on the floor and then banged it 5 more times. She takes a picture of Arthur as he lay there dying and sends it to Thomas. And paramedics arrive, and they find Arthur slumped lifelessly, barely clinging to life. Then they rush him to the Birmingham Children's Hospital, the very hospital he was brought into the world at just 6 and some years earlier. He's diagnosed there with an unsurvivable brain injury, and he's placed on life support. So now I'm going to play the 911 call here. So let me find it because it's in my phone. Silly me not being prepared. It's also pretty brutal, so if you need this moment to collect yourself, please take it. All right, I think I have it here. We'll see. If not, then we'll just play a different one, but I'm pretty sure this is it.
Ambulance service. Is the patient breathing?
Barely.
Okay, is he breathing right now, though? Even if he's...
Is he breathing, Tom? He keeps taking big dark breaths. Basically, my 6-year-old stepson is falling, he's banged his head.
Okay.
And while he was on the floor, he's banged his head another 5 times.
Okay.
He's lost colour, he's got a big lump on his head.
Is he awake?
So what's that,
Is he awake?
He's half in and out, but he's banged his head quite hard.
Is his breathing noisy or abnormal?
Is it noisy or abnormal? He's barely there. He's barely breathing. He's in and out. His safety's hard. He's basically been treating us all like shit. He's threw himself on the floor. He's headbutting the floor. I'm trying to pick him up in the process. He's headbutting me in the process.
Okay.
I've got him up. He was breathing like a little bit better at first.
Yeah.
Washed him down, put some water down him, tried to obviously get him like a bit more colour in him, but then obviously I've seen the lump on his head that he's done to himself.
Right. Help's been arranged for him. Okay.
Yeah.
Try and keep calm for me. Can you get him lay out flat on his back?
Flat on his back.
How old is he?
He's 6, nearly 7.
Years old. Okay.
Yeah.
Right, there is, mate.
He's very pale, but obviously it's a big bang. He's knocked himself out by the look of him.
And he's barely breathing now.
He's breathing. He's barely breathing. He's lost just at the minute.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you how to give basic life support. Okay, so you can just keep going.
Just briefly, what happened?
Basically, he's gone up.
So that was the 911 call, and you can hear Emma, and he banged his head 5 times. Like, she's just so focused on I don't know, like, to me, a startled mother calling 911, like, you're like panicked, you're like, oh my God, please hurry, he's not breathing. You're not taking time to articulate exactly what happened on the call. Like, I don't know, that just felt weird to me. Again, I'm not an investigative reporter, so who knows. But I also want to play audio from the first minute or two from when paramedics arrived on scene, and I want you to hear how she talks about Arthur and how she talks about herself and the priorities of what she chooses to talk about in that precious moment of paramedics first being on scene. Okay, now's not the time to scratch your toy. Sorry, my cats don't understand podcasting. Am I right? Come on now. But listen to the way she talks and notice what she doesn't say. Notice things that a mother that's panicked about her child's, brain injury would say that she doesn't say. So let me get that opened up too. My cat's back on the chair. And if you closet, okay, you lay down and be good. See, this is the benefit of not editing. You get to hear everything. So my cat scratching stuff, dogs barking. My dog groaned just now. I don't know if you could pick that up, if my mic picked it up, but she just sighed. She's sleeping. Imagine not hearing all of those precious details. I'm joking. All right, so this is the first minute and 20 so seconds. 2 minutes, sorry, the first 2 minutes roughly of when paramedics arrive on scene to assess Arthur.
What happened?
Basically, he's gone out to get me a cake for kids. Arthur was told to sit on the thinking step. Arthur's put himself all over the floor. He's banged himself off the radiator. He's hit me. He's kicked me in the process of me trying to get him back on the thinking step. He's then gone on all fours on the floor, and I've told him to get up. And I shut the door over, and all I heard was a crack off the floor. He was headbutting the floor on all fours. Headbutted the floor once, said, "Off, get up, you're going to hurt yourself. I've phoned your dad." He went, "I don't care." At that point, he was fine. And then he dropped his head again as I tried to bear hug him and pick him up, and he headbutted the floor 3 times.
Hey,
round about, the door was shut, so if you go in, I'll show you. It's probably about here his head was, but it's concrete, there's no underlay under that. But he banged his head 3 or 4 times. Obviously, the ambulance picked him up. He'd knocked himself unconscious. I picked him up, put him on the sofa, poured water in his mouth.
So you come in, he's banged his head 3 or 4 times here.
I was in the kitchen, then I sat down in the living room and for himself on the floor.
Then you heard him banging his head. So what did you do?
I came out to him and told him to get up. He told me no. So I tried to bear hug him. I put my arms underneath him and pick him up. And he dropped and he banged his head another 3 times off the floor. And as I picked him up, he hit me and he kicked me as I was trying to get him up.
And then what? So, and you went...
I picked him up off the floor.
Yeah.
Tried to put him on the stairs just to get him to... But his head's obviously going out, so I put him straight on the stairs.
Okay.
Very up for an ambulance.
So he's unresponsive?
Yeah. Like I say, he's like... The last 6 months, he's battered both my kids. He's smashed this house to pieces. He's battered his dad. He's hit me. When I tried to get him off the floor from headbutting the floor, he headbutted me and he kicked me and he's hit me. Yesterday we went to my friend's house and he pushed me down 5 stairs. "You're not my real mum, I hate you. I'm going to get my mum to kill you," he said. And even so, I've done my best for that kid. I tried to get him off the floor.
So I have a number of issues with this, obviously. The first being her allegation that the day before when she was at the hairdresser's house, he pushed her down 5 stairs. The boy who collapsed from standing managed to muster the strength to push a grown woman weighing like 130, 140 down some stairs. Calling bullshit on that. Second, he's 6 years old. He tore your house to shreds and he kicks and punches you and says, I want my dad to kill you. Like, just at what length do you expect anyone to believe that? You know, like, what a pathetic defense. I also want to talk about how not one time does she ask anything about, is he okay, to the people providing medical assistance to him. That's a video that I played the audio for. I could post the video. Hiccups again, sorry. But I just bullshit all the way through. I hate everything about her. I hate her stupid face. I hate her stupid voice. I hate everything about her. And she just sits there and talks poor me about how this 6-year-old beats me up. And I tried so hard with him. And all he does is tear my house to shreds and beat me up and push me down flights of stairs. A 6-year-old child that you just battered to the point he's unconscious with a brain injury. Priorities are fucked, girl. That's all I'm going to say. So the evening of June 16th, finally, Thomas and Emma are arrested. Doctors conclude that Arthur sadly is at the mercy of his brain injury and that there's nothing that they can do for him. His life support is turned off about 1 a.m. on the morning of June 17th, and his cause of death is announced as blunt force trauma to the head. So just to take a second to digest that. Rest in peace, Arthur, 6 years old, and your life was taken from you by a 30-some-odd-year woman who is 4 times, 5 times your size. The very people he relied on to care for him. At the time of his autopsy, which happened shortly after his death, he was found to have been suffering from salt poisoning, as we suspected, malnourishment, and his tiny, frail body was covered in over 130 bruises and contusions. The case prompted nationwide media coverage and opened up the dialogue for the hidden victims of the COVID pandemic. Not everyone got to quarantine comfortably at home. A lot of people were trapped in their homes with their abusers and under an increasingly mental duress. So it also prompts a closer look into child protective services and how diligent they were being at actually keeping children safe. And then people started to draw a lot of parallels because at the same time, or close to the same time Arthur was killed, there was another young child killed in the UK by their step-parent also during the pandemic, and her name was Star Hobson. That one was also terrible. It deserves its own episode, but we can only handle so much trauma at one time. So if you want to look into it, Google it. But she was a 1-year-old child that was horribly abused, neglected, and eventually killed by her mother's partner during COVID. And there's a lot of synchronicity between those 2 cases. That was my dog walking away, just pointing out the sounds as they come. There's a lot of synchronicity between the 2 cases. I do believe that CPS was also involved in Star Hobson, but don't quote me because I didn't dig that far into her case. I just briefly, I noticed a lot of parallels. But during questioning, Thomas admitted he played a role in the abuse, obviously, but he alleged that Emma was really the mastermind behind the torture. And he recalled a specific day, that day that the social worker came to the house, and that the children enthusiastically answered her question about being safe and happy and jumped to the ceiling, remember? So he said Emily actually coached and threatened the boys to play along and to lie to her, to the social worker, and convinced Thomas to take part in the fallacy too, and said that if he didn't, they could lose all of their children. So she threatened him, although I don't know why he fell for it, but easy to manipulate. His testimony, along with hundreds of files, including videos, text messages, audio and media clips, and photographs of Arthur enduring this torture, helped secure sentencing for both, but neither of them got what they should have, in my opinion. In December 2021, Emma was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 29 years to be served at HMP Peterborough Prison. I don't know what HMP is. I know HMS is Her Majesty's ship, so maybe Her Majesty's Prison? I don't know. If you're from the UK, let me know. That's fucking dumb. Really? A minimum of 29 years? Thomas was convicted of slightly less harsh manslaughter, also fucking dumb, and he was sentenced to 21 years, and he is serving those in HMP Wakefield. And a national inquiry into the case by the government announced that CPS had been involved in Arthur's life on a variety of occasions since the child was 4, so as far back as 2018, yet they repeatedly decided not to intervene. Years later, after his death, a family member speaks out about the horrific abuse, and I think she talked to a podcast, so I was reading the scripted version. And she said that she remembered him to Arthur, before the months of torment and neglect, to be a normal and happy boy who loved sausage rolls and wanted to grow up and be Batman or to be a football player. And that, my friends, is the daunting and despicable story of Arthur Labinjo Hughes, who died at the hands of the people whose only purpose was to keep him safe and healthy. I mean, what could a 6-year-old really have done to make you hate him so much? I don't understand it, but I guess that's the thing about psychopaths. They're not to be understood. So my too cool for school fact on this one. On July 29th, 2022, judges discussed the verdicts among Emma and Thomas, and they were looking at their sentencing, and they felt that despite Emma's sentence, which they felt properly matched the crime, side note, it doesn't, they felt that Thomas's was too lenient, so they added on some more time. How much time do you think they gave him? They gave him 3 more years, so a total of 24 years. Woo! That'll sure show him. Although comparatively, Arthur's mom, Olivia, who shot her boyfriend, who domestically abused her, she got 11 years. So I guess the justice system doesn't really know what it's doing because, like, in my opinion, she should not have got 11 years for shooting her abuser if she had documented history of abuse. But they should have definitely got way more than a couple decades for killing a child over the course of a year in a horrible and sadistic fashion. What's going on with your justice system, UK? I mean, America is not much better, but everybody needs work, I guess. I don't know. I don't think anybody knows what it's doing. The justice system for sure. But CPS apparently, I thought organized dysfunctional systems only existed in America, but apparently they're everywhere. So, all right. So we brought you down. We're going to bring you back up because we need to lighten the mood a little before we go out drown our sorrows in a bottle after this. So I almost debated not doing a joke because the story is messed up and it's our first child case. And there's going to be more, but honestly, all the deaths we have covered have been terrible and tragic, and we still did the joke after their story. So we're just going to do it. Don't judge me for trying to keep the mood light. And if you made it this far, I know you need it. So here's my dad joke. And it's not really relevant because it's a dad joke. And our topic's about a murderous father. So inherently, it makes sense. So, all right. A boy asks his father, "Dad, are bugs okay to eat?" The father erupts in disgust and is like, "That's gross, son. Don't talk about things like that when we're eating." The boy shrugs and continues eating. And a couple hours later after dinner, the father approached his son and he's like, "All right, now what was it you wanted to ask me about eating bugs earlier when we were eating dinner?" The boy looked at him and kind of smirked and said, "Well, there was a bug in your soup, but it's gone now." I thought that was cute. You know me, I like the dad jokes. Okay, so the hint for this one was kind of lame with the not all people named Arthur are kings. Okay, I'm going to be honest. I didn't have a good hint, and that just flew out like 30 seconds before we started to record. I actually laughed about how lame it was, so don't judge it. I have a better hint for this one. So did you know around 12,000 BC, North America had jaguars, lions, cheetahs, and cougars roaming the continent? And that's true. You can look it up. They're crazy looking, and it's crazy to imagine. But most of them died out, but not all of them. That's your hint. Do you like it? I'm petting you. Can you feel that? All right. Okay. Now the freaky corner is done. Question of the week. How do you think my dogs are going to do when they know I'm recording? They're going to bark and they're going to talk. Anyway, how do you think sentencing should be determined in cases of murder and manslaughter? How many years is too many and how many years is too few? So give your answer on what you think appropriate sentencing would be in those cases of murder Did you know that your blood makes up about 8% of your overall body weight? Yeah, neither did I. It's okay. I didn't know that either. Welcome, by the way, to One Nothing Podcast. I read this thing recently that you have to grab a person's attention in the first 5 seconds or they lose interest and just scroll past. So we'll see if that worked when I check out the stats for the download for this episode next week. So if you're still here, what a week it has been, you guys. Oh my gosh. I've been working nonstop. It feels like, in reality, I've been working nonstop. I had to find time to do like the 4 hours worth of research for this episode, and then working 2 jobs, and I'm working a bunch of hours between the 2 jobs. And then, of course, I also have the Virginia City Chronicles episode 1 coming out with the Paranormal Project, which is coming later today, the live. So stay tuned to our Instagram for the link to the live because you're not going to want to miss it. It is spooky as hell. But it's just been a lot going on, and I'm really thankful for it because you guys have been great. This community has been so welcoming and supportive, and I'm just very thankful to have you guys, sharing your lives with me and these fellow podcasts that kind of show support to me, and I like to show support back. I'm just really grateful. And life is really tough for me right now, kind of like living alone in Southwest Florida as a not super high income person is a struggle. So it's nice. And I just recently moved here a few years ago, I guess, if that's recent. So I don't have a huge social circle yet because it's weird. It's like hard to make friends when you're an adult. I'm not in any clubs or anything. I just work and I work from home. And then I DoorDash, and then I don't really have much of a social life because I just work a lot. So it's hard for me. But you guys make it fun, you make it worthwhile. I really see this podcast going somewhere, and I really hope it does. And you guys are helping me to kind of like envision that. So I really, really appreciate it. I really wish people would start listening to like our recent episodes because I do feel like every episode gets better. It's like a fine wine, you know? I feel like where we are now is so much better than where we are on episode 1. Episode 1 is honestly, it's a little embarrassing. I'm not going to lie. I didn't really know what I was doing, but it's okay. That's how it starts. The point is everybody keeps listening to episode 1 and they don't like it. And then they don't listen to anything else, but we're funny. So just download the more recent episodes and listen to some of the funny stuff and some of the better cases not better cases, they're all good, but like the more detailed, there wasn't a whole lot of detail on Barbara. I do a lot more detail now. So just listen to the new stuff.